The galaxy was vast, a swirling expanse of stars and planets that stretched beyond the imagination. Among its countless civilizations, humanity was still considered an infant race. Earth had only recently begun to send ships into deep space, colonizing nearby star systems like Proxima Centauri and Tau Ceti. These colonies were small and fragile compared to the sprawling empires of older species, but they represented humanity's first steps into the cosmos. For centuries, Earth had been silent, hidden from the rest of the universe by its relative obscurity. But now, something unusual was happening. Across the galaxy, a message began to echo through subspace channels, a warning spoken in cold, measured tones. It came from the Vorthax, ancient beings who had existed long before most civilizations could even dream of reaching the stars. "Do not attack Earth or its colonies," the message said. "Humanity's wrath knows no bounds." At first, many dismissed it as a hoax. The Vorthax were mysterious creatures, rarely seen and poorly understood. Their warnings seemed absurd. How could such a young, unremarkable species pose any real threat? Stories circulated among some alien cultures about encounters with humans. Thousands of years ago, stories of battles where humanity refused to surrender, no matter how dire the odds. But these tales were dismissed as myths, exaggerations meant to scare children. Among those who paid little attention to the warning were the Zetherians. They were a proud, militaristic empire that prided itself on conquest. With sleek warships and advanced weapons, they viewed themselves as the dominant force in the galaxy. To them, humanity was nothing more than a minor nuisance, a collection of scattered colonies waiting to be absorbed into their growing territory. On the bridge of their flagship, Commander Krelix stared at the holographic map of the galaxy. His eyes narrowed as he zoomed in on Earth's location. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, glancing at his second-in-command, Zenara. "These humans are primitive. Look at them. They can't even agree amongst themselves. What harm could they possibly do?" Zenara tilted her head, thoughtfully. She was younger than Krelak, but equally ambitious. "The Vorthax warned us," she reminded him cautiously. "They wouldn't issue such a statement without reason." Krelak snorted. "The Vorthax are relics of the past. Their time has passed. Besides, if they truly feared humans so much, why didn't they destroy them when they had the chance?" He turned back to the map, tapping a claw-like finger against Earth's marker. "No, this is an opportunity we cannot ignore. If we conquer Earth, we'll send a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. The Zetherian Empire will tolerate no rivals." Zenara hesitated, but eventually nodded. She trusted Krulak's judgment, even if part of her felt uneasy. After all, what did they really know about humans? Meanwhile, on Earth, news of the Vorthax warning spread quickly. Social media erupted with memes and jokes, mocking the idea of an alien invasion. Many people laughed it off, dismissing it as science fiction nonsense. Others, however, weren't so sure. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in her office at the United Earth Defense Coalition headquarters, staring at a screen displaying the transcript of the Vorthax message. A former astrophysicist turned military strategist, Elena had spent years preparing for scenarios just like this one. Her dark eyes scanned the words again and again, searching for hidden meaning. "They're serious," she murmured aloud, though there was no one else in the room to hear her. Why would the Vorthax bother issuing a warning unless they believed it was necessary? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Admiral Raj Patel stepped inside, his face grim. "You've seen the message?" he asked, taking a seat across from her. Elena nodded. "It's troubling. If the Vorthax are willing to broadcast something like this, it means they genuinely fear what might happen if someone attacks us." Raj leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "But why? We're not exactly a powerhouse out here." Our colonies are barely holding together, and our military isn't strong enough to take on a major galactic power." "That's just it," Elena replied. "Maybe strength isn't the point. Maybe it's something else, something about how we think, how we fight. Remember the stories about the Vorthax encountering humans millennia ago? Those legends always mention one thing: humans never give up." Raj sighed heavily. "Well, whether it's true or not, we need to prepare. I've already ordered increased patrols around our colonies and boosted surveillance near Earth if someone decides to test us." He didn't finish the sentence, but Ilana understood. Humanity wasn't ready for a full-scale war, especially not against an advanced alien race. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Across the planet, similar conversations were taking place. Governments convened emergency meetings, debating how best to respond to the Vorthax warning. Some argued for diplomacy, hoping to establish alliances with other species. Others pushed for rapid militarization, fearing that aggression was inevitable. While politicians bickered, ordinary citizens began preparing in their own ways. In cities and towns around the world, people stockpiled supplies, learned basic survival skills, and formed neighborhood watch groups. Online forums buzzed with discussions about potential alien threats and strategies for resistance. For many, the Vorthax warning served as a wake-up call, a reminder that humanity's survival depended on unity and preparation. Unbeknownst to anyone on Earth, the Zetherians were already making their move. Deep within their territory, massive shipyards churned out new vessels day and night. Troops trained relentlessly, honing their skills for the coming campaign. Krillak watched it all unfold with satisfaction, confident that his plan would succeed. "We'll hit them hard and fast," he told Zinara during one of their briefings. "By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late." Zinara nodded, though her unease lingered. She couldn't shake the image of the Vorthax message, playing over and over in her mind. What if they were wrong? What if humanity was more dangerous than they appeared? Far away, on a distant moon orbiting a dying star, the Vorthax observed silently. They had done their part, issuing the warning as a final act of caution. Now, it was up to fate and humanity to decide the outcome. As the days passed, tension mounted across the galaxy. On Earth, people went about their lives, trying to remain hopeful despite the uncertainty looming overhead. Little did they know, the Zetherian fleet was already en route, carrying with it the seeds of destruction and the beginning of a conflict that would change everything. In the quiet moments between laughter and fear, humanity waited. And somewhere, deep within the hearts of billions, a spark of determination burned brighter than ever before. The silence of space was shattered as the Zetherian fleet emerged from hyperspace near Proxima Centauri, one of humanity's closest and most vital colonies. The armada stretched across the void like a swarm of metallic insects, each ship bristling with weapons and glowing with ominous red lights. Commander Krillak stood on the bridge of his flagship, his sharp eyes fixed on the holographic display of the colony below. It was a small world, dotted with cities and sprawling industrial complexes. To him, it looked fragile, easy prey. "Begin the assault," Krillak ordered, his voice cold and commanding. Without hesitation, the Zetherians launched their attack. Massive energy beams lanced out from their ships, striking the planet's surface with devastating precision. Cities erupted in flames as buildings collapsed into rubble. Power grids failed, plunging entire regions into darkness. Communication networks were obliterated, leaving the colonists scrambling in confusion. Within minutes, millions of lives were lost, and the once thriving colony was reduced to chaos. On the ground, panic spread like wildfire. People ran through the streets, searching for shelter or trying to reach evacuation points that no longer existed. Emergency broadcasts crackled over surviving speakers, urging citizens to stay calm and seek safety. But calm was impossible, and the sky itself seemed to be raining fire. High above the carnage, a squadron of human fighter pilots scrambled to respond. Their ships were outdated compared to the sleek, advanced vessels of the Zetherians, but they had something their enemies lacked: sheer determination. Led by Captain Marcus Kane, a grizzled veteran with years of experience in space combat, the pilots formed up and prepared to engage the invaders. "This is insane," shouted Lieutenant Ava Chun, her voice trembling over the comms as she watched the orbital bombardment continue. "How are we supposed to fight back against that?" "We do what we can," Marcus replied firmly. His voice was steady, though his hands gripped the controls tightly. "We hit them hard. Make them regret coming here. Stick close and follow my lead." The fighters dove toward the enemy fleet, weaving between the larger ships to avoid being targeted. Their weapons, primitive plasma cannons and missiles, were nowhere near as powerful as the Zetherians, but they made up for it with speed and ingenuity. Marcus led his team in a series of daring strafing runs, targeting weak points on the hulls of the enemy vessels. Explosions blossomed across the darkened void as their shots found their marks. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might actually stand a chance. Then the Zetherians retaliated. Swarms of smaller drone ships detached from the main fleet, surrounding the human fighters and cutting off their escape routes. One by one, the defenders were picked off, their fragile craft torn apart by overwhelming firepower. Ava's ship was hit, spinning out of control before exploding in a burst of light. Marcus gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus despite the loss. "Fall back," he ordered, knowing they couldn't win this fight. "Regroup at Point Echo." But even as the survivors retreated, the damage had been done. The Zetherians had demonstrated their superiority, and the colony's defenses were crumbling. Ground troops began landing, securing key locations and rounding up survivors. Resistance was fierce in some areas, with colonists using whatever tools they could find to fight back. Farmers wielded improvised explosives made from fertilizer, while engineers hacked into abandoned mining equipment to create makeshift turrets. Every act of defiance came at a cost, but it only fueled the invaders' frustration. Back on Earth, news of the attack reached the United Earth Defense Coalition within hours. Footage from Proxima Centauri flooded social media and news outlets, showing the horrifying scale of the destruction. Cities burned, people screamed, and bodies lay strewn across the streets. For many, it was their first glimpse of alien life, and it was terrifying. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the reports unfold on a large screen in the Coalition's command center. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched as she absorbed the reality of the situation. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was an invasion. Humanity's worst fears had come true. "We need to act now," she said, turning to Admiral Raj Patel, who stood beside her. "If we don't mobilize every available resource, we'll lose more colonies, and eventually Earth itself." Raj nodded grimly. "Agreed. I've already ordered all military units to prepare for deployment. Civilian ships are being retrofitted for combat, and we're recalling every pilot and soldier we can find." Elena hesitated, then added, "We also need to activate Project Phoenix." Raj's expression darkened. Project Phoenix was a classified initiative designed for scenarios exactly like this one, a full-scale alien invasion. It involved experimental technology, including AI-driven drones, cloaking devices, and even genetic enhancements for soldiers. The project had been shelved due to ethical concerns and budget cuts, but now there was no choice. Humanity needed every advantage it could get done as preparations continued. Ordinary citizens around the world sprang into action. Factories that once produced cars and electronics shifted to manufacturing weapons and armor. Schools and community centers became training grounds for volunteers eager to join the fight. Social media buzzed with calls to arms, inspiring millions to step forward. Despite the danger, among those who answered the call was a young woman named Sofia Alvarez. A mechanic by trade, she had spent her life fixing engines and tinkering with machines. When she heard about the attack on Proxima Centauri, she didn't hesitate to sign up. Standing in line at a recruitment center, clutching a wrench in one hand and a hastily written resume in the other, Sophia felt a mix of fear and determination. "I may not know how to shoot a gun," she told the recruiter, "but I can fix anything you throw at me. Just give me a chance." Her enthusiasm was shared by countless others. From teenagers to retirees, people from all walks of life volunteered to contribute in any way they could. Some joined local militias, learning basic combat skills. Others worked behind the scenes, coding software, building equipment, or caring for the wounded. Humanity was uniting in a way it never had before, driven by a single goal: survival. Meanwhile, on Proxima Centauri, the Resistance fought on. Though vastly outnumbered and outgunned, the colonists refused to surrender. In one particularly brutal skirmish, a group of engineers managed to hijack a Zetherian supply ship, using it to broadcast a message back to Earth. The transmission was grainy and distorted, but the message was clear: we will not go quietly. For every one of us you take, 10 more will rise to fight. This is our home, and we will defend it to our last breath. The words resonated deeply with everyone who heard them. On Earth, they became a rallying cry, printed on posters and chanted at rallies. Even as the death toll mounted, hope remained alive. Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout its history wars, plagues, natural disasters, and it had always endured. This time would be no different. Commander Krillak, however, was growing increasingly frustrated. The colony should have fallen days ago, yet pockets of resistance continued to hold out. Reports from the front lines described humans fighting with a ferocity that bordered on madness. Civilians armed with nothing more than kitchen knives charged headlong into battle, screaming defiance as they were cut down. Soldiers rigged traps in ambush, turning the terrain into a deadly maze. Even children participated, sabotaging supply lines and spreading misinformation online. What is wrong with these creatures? Krillak demanded during a briefing, slamming his fist onto the table. Why won't they just die? Zanara, seated nearby, glanced at him uneasily. She had warned him about underestimating humans, but he had dismissed her concerns. Now, she wondered if the Vorthak's warning had been right after all. Could humanity truly be as dangerous as they claimed? They're adaptive, she ventured cautiously. They learn quickly and adapt to new situations. That's why they've survived so long on their homeworld. Krillak snarled. Adaptation won't save them now. Order the ground forces to intensify their efforts. Burn everything if you have to. I want this planet pacified within the week. As the orders were carried out, the colony descended further into ruin. Fires raged unchecked, consuming entire districts. Refugees fled into the wilderness, pursued by Zetherian patrols. Yet even in the face of such devastation, the spirit of resistance endured. Hidden bunkers served as bases for guerrilla fighters, while underground networks coordinated attacks. Every loss was met with renewed determination. Every setback transformed into a lesson. By the time the colony finally fell, weeks later, the Zetherians had suffered losses far greater than anticipated. Their ships bore scars from countless battles, and their troops were exhausted. Krillak stared at the smoldering remains of the colony from his flagship, his pride wounded, but his resolve unshaken. This is only the beginning, he muttered. Earth will be next. And far away, on the blue-green orb that was humanity's birthplace, preparations continued. The stage was set for the greatest conflict Earth had ever known. A battle not just for territory, but for the very soul of humanity. As the Zetherian fleet turned its sights toward Earth, the question loomed large. Would humanity's courage and ingenuity be enough to withstand the storm? Or would the invaders' superior strength prove insurmountable? The Zetherian fleet approached Earth, its massive ships casting long shadows over the planet below. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful, a blue-green jewel floating in the endless blackness of space. But Commander Krillic knew better. Beneath that serene surface lay a world brimming with defiance. He had seen it on Proxima Centauri, where humans had fought tooth and nail despite overwhelming odds. That memory still gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside. This time, he vowed, there would be no mistakes. "Begin orbital bombardment," Krillic ordered. His voice sharp and cold. Energy beams lanced down from the sky, striking cities and military installations with terrifying precision. Explosions lit up the horizon as buildings crumbled and fires spread. Entire neighborhoods were wiped out in seconds, leaving behind nothing but ash and rubble. The attack was relentless, designed to break humanity's spirit before the ground invasion even began. On the ground, chaos erupted. People ran through the streets, searching for shelter or trying to reach evacuation points. Emergency sirens wailed, their shrill cries drowned out by the deafening roar of destruction. Communication networks collapsed under the strain, leaving survivors isolated and desperate. Yet amid the panic, something remarkable happened. Instead of surrendering, humanity fought back. In New York City, a group of civilians turned skyscrapers into fortresses. Using whatever materials they could find, steel beams, concrete blocks, even old cars, they barricaded intersections and set up ambush points. When Zetherian ground troops arrived, they found themselves walking into a trap. Guerrilla fighters armed with makeshift weapons struck quickly and retreated just as fast, leaving the invaders confused and frustrated. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Tokyo, engineers hacked into abandoned subway systems, using them to launch surprise attacks on enemy supply lines. In Johannesburg, farmers used tractors and bulldozers to create barriers, slowing the advance of Zetherian tanks. Even children joined the effort, spreading misinformation online and sabotaging equipment left behind by the invaders. High above the battlefield, remnants of Earth's space fleet engaged the Zetherian armada. Outnumbered and outgunned, the human ships relied on clever tactics to survive. Captain Marcus Kane led his squadron in a series of daring maneuvers, targeting weak points on the enemy vessels. Swarms of his AI-driven drones, hastily deployed from Project Phoenix, provided additional support, distracting the Zetherians and buying precious time for reinforcements. But the cost was staggering. Ship after ship exploded in bursts of light, their crews lost forever. Marcus clenched his jaw as he watched another pilot go down. "Stay focused," he barked over the comms. "We can't let them win." Despite their bravery, the human forces were losing ground. The Zetherians established beachheads along coastlines and major cities, bringing in wave after wave of reinforcements. Ground troops swept through urban areas, rounding up survivors and executing anyone who resisted. The death toll climbed higher with each passing day, and the once vibrant cities of Earth became ghost towns. Back at the United Earth Defense Coalition headquarters, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked tirelessly to coordinate the defense effort. Her office was cluttered with maps, reports, and half-empty cups of coffee. She barely slept, her mind racing with strategies and contingencies. Beside her, Admiral Raj Patel paced anxiously, his face lined with worry. "We're running out of options," Raj admitted, stopping to stare at a holographic display of the battle zones. "Our forces are stretched too thin. If we don't turn this around soon..." Elena cut him off. "We will turn it around. We have to." She pointed to a section of the map showing a cluster of industrial facilities near the Aquarium. "If we can hit their supply lines here, we might be able to slow them down." Raj nodded reluctantly. "It's risky, but it's our best shot. I'll assemble a strike team immediately." As preparations continued, ordinary citizens stepped up in ways no one could have predicted. Sofia Alvarez, the mechanic who had volunteered weeks earlier, now led a crew of volunteers repairing damaged fighter ships. Working around the clock in makeshift hangars, they patched bullet holes, replaced engines, and reloaded weapons. Their hands were calloused and their faces streaked with grease. But their determination never wavered. "This isn't just about fixing machines," Sofia told her team one night, pausing to wipe sweat from her brow. "It's about giving our pilots a fighting chance. Every ship we send back out there is another blow against the enemy." Her words echoed across the planet. In factories, workers labored nonstop to produce ammunition and supplies. In hospitals, doctors and nurses treated the wounded, often working without proper tools or medicine. Even artists and musicians contributed, creating posters and songs to boost morale. Humanity was united in a way it had never been before, driven by a shared purpose: survival. Meanwhile, deep within the heart of the conflict, acts of heroism inspired hope. In London, a young boy named Liam risked his life to deliver food and medical supplies to trapped families. In Sydney, a retired soldier named Tom organized a network of underground bunkers, providing safe havens for refugees. And in Moscow, a scientist named Anya developed a new kind of EMP device capable of disabling Cytherian technology temporarily. One pivotal moment occurred when a group of hackers managed to infiltrate the Cytherian command network. Led by a brilliant teenager named Priya, the team spent days decoding encrypted signals and planting viruses. Their efforts paid off when they successfully disabled the shields of several capital ships, leaving them vulnerable to attack. "Now's our chance," Marcus shouted over the comms as the human fleet regrouped. "Hit them hard." With renewed ferocity, the human ships launched a coordinated assault, targeting the exposed vessels. Explosions rocked the Cytherian fleet as their ships were torn apart. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity tasted victory, but the celebration was short-lived. The Cytherians responded with brutal efficiency, launching counterattacks that pushed the defenders back. Casualties mounted on both sides, and Earth's surface remained scarred and broken. Billions had already perished, and the end seemed inevitable. Commander Krillak watched the battle unfold from his flagship, his expression grim. Despite their earlier setbacks, the humans refused to give up. Reports poured in from all corners of the globe, describing acts of resistance that defied logic. Civilians armed with rocks and sticks charged headlong into battle. Soldiers rigged traps in ambush, turning the terrain into a deadly maze. Even children participated, spreading misinformation and sabotaging equipment. "What is wrong with these creatures?" Krillak demanded during a briefing, slamming his fist onto the table. "Why won't they just die?" Zenara, seated nearby, glanced at him uneasily. She had warned him about underestimating humans, but he had dismissed her concerns. Now, she wondered if the Vorthak's warning had been right after all. Could humanity truly be as dangerous as they claimed? "They're adaptive," she ventured cautiously. "They learn quickly and adapt to new situations. That's why they've survived so long on their homeworld." Krillak snarled. "Adaptation won't save them now. Order the ground forces to intensify their efforts. Burn everything if you have to. I want this planet pacified within the week." As the orders were carried out, the colony descended further into ruin. Fires raged unchecked, consuming entire districts. Refugees fled into the wilderness, pursued by Cytherian patrols. Yet even in the face of such devastation, the spirit of resistance endured. Hidden bunkers served as bases for guerrilla fighters, while underground networks coordinated attacks. Every loss was met with renewed determination. Every setback transformed into a lesson. By the time the dust settled, Earth lay in ruins. Cities were reduced to smoldering wastelands, and billions of lives had been lost. Yet, amidst the devastation, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. Survivors banded together, vowing to make the Zetherians regret ever setting foot on their home planet. Far away, the Vorthax observed silently. They had done their part, issuing the warning as a final act of caution. Now, it was up to fate and humanity to decide the outcome. In the quiet moments between despair and defiance, one thing was certain: humanity would not go down without a fight. And though the battle for Earth had been lost, the war was far from over. The battle for Earth had ended in devastation. Cities lay in ruins, and billions of lives were lost. The planet that once teemed with life now resembled a graveyard, its skies filled with ash and its lands scarred by war. Yet, amidst the wreckage, humanity refused to give up. In hidden bunkers, underground labs, and makeshift command centers, survivors worked tirelessly to rebuild what they could and prepare for the next stage of the fight. Elena Vasquez stood in a dimly lit room deep beneath the surface, surrounded by maps, blueprints, and holographic displays. Her face was pale from days without sleep, but her eyes burned with determination. Beside her, Admiral Raj Patel leaned over a table, pointing at a cluster of stars on a galactic map. "This is our chance," Raj said firmly. "If we hit them where it hurts, their supply lines and colonies, we can weaken their grip on the galaxy." Elena nodded. "We've already reverse-engineered enough of their technology to build better weapons. With Project Phoenix fully operational, we can strike back harder than they expect." Project Phoenix had become the backbone of humanity's resistance. What started as an experimental initiative was now a full-blown operation, producing advanced drones, cloaking devices, and genetically enhanced soldiers. These enhancements allowed humans to push their bodies beyond normal limits, giving them strength, speed, and endurance unmatched by any natural species. Among those who volunteered for the genetic program was Sofia Alvarez, the mechanic turned soldier. After weeks of grueling training and painful procedures, she emerged stronger, faster, and more resilient than ever before. Standing in front of a mirror, she flexed her arms, marveling at the changes within her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had fallen. "We call you Titans," Elena told Sophia and the other volunteers during a briefing. "You're the tip of the spear. Without you, this counterattack won't succeed." Sophia clenched her fists. "Then let's make sure it does." As preparations continued, humanity launched a series of daring raids against Zetherian outposts scattered across nearby star systems. Small teams of Titans led these missions, striking quickly and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Each successful attack boosted morale and provided valuable resources, weapons, fuel, and intel that fueled the growing resistance. One such mission took place on a desert moon orbiting a distant gas giant. A team of Titans, led by Captain Marcus Kane, infiltrated a Zetherian supply depot under cover of darkness. Using cloaking devices developed from stolen alien tech, they moved silently through the facility, planting explosives on key targets. 3 minutes until detonation. Marcus whispered into his comms, his voice calm despite the tension. "Everyone fall back to the extraction point." The team retreated just as the charges went off, sending plumes of fire and smoke billowing into the air. Behind them, the depot collapsed in a deafening roar, cutting off a critical supply line for the Zetherians. As their ship lifted off, Marcus glanced back at the burning ruins. It was a small victory, but every blow counted. Word of these raids spread quickly, inspiring hope among human colonies still holding out against the invaders. On Tau Ceti, a group of farmers used guerrilla tactics to sabotage Zetherian patrols. On Epsilon Eridani, engineers built makeshift spacecraft armed with plasma cannons, launching surprise attacks on enemy convoys. Even children joined the effort, spreading misinformation online and creating decoys to lure Zetherian forces into traps. But humanity's greatest challenge lay ahead. Deep within Zetherian territory, intelligence reports revealed the location of a heavily fortified fortress world, a staging ground for the Empire's military operations. If humanity could destroy it, they would deal a crippling blow to the Zetherians' ability to wage war. General Elena Vasquez presented the plan during a meeting with top military leaders. "We'll need everything we've got for this," she said, pointing to a holographic image of the fortress world. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. This is our best shot at ending this war." Admiral Raj Patel frowned. "It's risky. If we fail, we'll lose what little we have left." Elena met his gaze steadily. "If we don't try, we're finished anyway. We've come too far to give up now." The decision was made. Humanity's remaining fleet assembled near the edge of Zetherian space, preparing for the most dangerous mission in their history. Ships bristled with weapons and carried thousands of troops, including the Titans. Among them was Sophia, who felt a mix of fear and excitement as she strapped into her seat aboard the flagship. "This is it," Marcus said, addressing the crew over the intercom. "Today, we show the Zetherians and the entire galaxy what happens when you mess with humanity. Stay sharp, stay focused, and remember why we're here." As the fleet approached the fortress world, automated defenses sprang to life, launching waves of drones and missiles. The battle erupted instantly, filling the void with streaks of light and explosions. Human ships darted through the chaos, dodging enemy fire while returning volleys of their own. Cloaked vessels slipped past the outer perimeter, delivering squads of Titans directly onto the planet's surface. On the ground, Sophia and her team fought their way through fortified bunkers and energy shields. Their enhanced abilities gave them an edge, allowing them to overpower Zetherian guards and disable security systems. Every step forward was hard-won, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Meanwhile, in orbit, the human fleet engaged the Zetherian armada in a desperate struggle for control. Outnumbered and outgunned, the defenders relied on clever tactics and sheer determination to hold their ground. Swarms of AI-driven drones overwhelmed enemy ships, creating openings for human fighters to exploit. Explosions lit up the sky as both sides clashed in a brutal dance of destruction, in the midst of the chaos. Priya, the young hacker who had infiltrated the Zetherian network earlier in the war, worked feverishly to disrupt their communications. Her fingers flew across a keyboard as lines of code scrolled across her screen. "Almost there," she muttered, sweat dripping from her brow. With a final keystroke, she succeeded, disabling the fortress world's primary shield generator. "Shield is down," someone shouted over the comms. "Now's our chance." Human ships surged forward, targeting the exposed core of the fortress world. Missiles and energy beams struck home, tearing apart the massive structure piece by piece. Inside, Sophia and her team reached the central reactor, planning explosives designed to trigger a chain reaction. "Detonation in 30 seconds, Sophia said, her voice steady despite the urgency. "Let's move." They sprinted toward the extraction point as alarms blared around them. Behind them, the reactor began to overload, sending shockwaves rippling through the facility. As their ship lifted off, the fortress world erupted in a blinding flash of light, obliterating everything in its vicinity. The explosion marked a turning point in the war. Zetherian forces reeled from the loss of their stronghold, struggling to regroup and adapt. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity held the upper hand, but the cost had been immense. Entire generations had been wiped out, and Earth itself remained scarred and broken. Yet, amidst the devastation, survivors clung to hope. Across the galaxy, Stories of heroism inspired even former enemies to lend support. The Vorthax reappeared, offering cryptic advice and limited assistance, hinting that humanity's fate might hold significance far beyond their own survival. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: humanity's counterattack had succeeded, but the war was far from over. Somewhere in the depths of space, Commander Krelak vowed revenge. And somewhere else, whispers of a hidden superweapon capable of wiping out all life in the galaxy sent shivers down the spines of those who heard them. Humanity had proven its resilience, ingenuity, and unyielding will to survive. But the galaxy was vast, and the road ahead promised more challenges and sacrifices than anyone could imagine. The victory at the Fortress World had been a turning point, but it came with a heavy price. Humanity's fleet was battered and reduced to a fraction of its former strength. Earth remained a shadow of its former self, its cities in ruins and its people struggling to survive. Yet, despite the losses, hope flickered in the hearts of those who refused to give up. They knew the war wasn't over. While the Zitharians still drew breath. Intelligence. Reports began to surface about something even more terrifying than the fortress. A hidden superweapon deep within Zitharian territory. Dubbed the Annihilator, it was said to be capable of destabilizing entire star systems, unleashing waves of destruction that could wipe out all life for light years in every direction. If activated, it wouldn't just destroy humanity, it would obliterate countless other civilizations, including some who had secretly aided the ZYTHERIANS. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the data on her screen, her hands trembling slightly. She had spent days analyzing intercepted communications and piecing together fragments of information. The conclusion was clear: if the Annihilator went online, there would be no second chances. "We have to stop it," she said during an emergency meeting with Admiral Raj Patel and General Marcus Kane. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the weight of the decision they faced. "If we don't neutralize that weapon, everything we've fought for will be meaningless." Raj leaned forward, his expression grim. "And how do you propose we do that? Our forces are stretched thin as it is. Even if we could reach the Zitharian homeworld, we'd never make it past their defenses." Elena hesitated before responding. "We'll need a suicide mission." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she meant. A small team would have to infiltrate Zitharian space, bypass their defenses, and deliver a payload directly into the heart of the Annihilator. It was a one-way trip, and the volunteers would likely never return. Marcus stood up, his jaw set firmly. "I'll lead the mission." "No," Elena said sharply. "You're too valuable here. Someone else needs to go." Sofia Alvarez stepped forward, her enhanced body radiating quiet confidence. "I'll do it," she said simply. Her voice carried no hesitation, only resolve. "I've trained for this. Let me finish what I started." One by one, others joined her: titans, pilots, engineers, and hackers, all willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. Among them was Priya, the young hacker whose skills had proven invaluable throughout the war. She glanced at Sophia, her youthful face pale but determined. "I'm in," she said softly. The team prepared quickly, knowing time was against them. Their ship, the Eclipse, was retrofitted with experimental cloaking technology and loaded with a doomsday device designed to overload the Annihilator's core. It was a desperate plan, but it was all they had done as the Eclipse launched from a hidden base near the edge of Zitharian space. Sophia stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. For a moment, she allowed herself to think about home, the mechanic shop where she used to work, the laughter of friends, the simple joys of life before the war. Then she pushed those thoughts aside. There was no room for sentimentality now. "This is it," Marcus said over the comms, his voice crackling with static. "Good luck, Eclipse." Humanity is counting on you. The journey through Zetherian territory was fraught with danger. Automated defense systems scanned for intruders, and patrol ships prowled the void like predators hunting prey. The crew relied on their cloaking device and Priya's hacking skills to slip past undetected. Every close call left them holding their breath, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure wasn't an option. When they finally reached the Zetherian homeworld, the sight took their breath away. It was a massive planet surrounded by layers of fortifications, orbital platforms, energy shields, and swarms of drones. At its center loomed the Annihilator itself, a colossal structure bristling with weapons and glowing with ominous energy. "We're not getting any closer without a distraction," Sophia said, studying the map on her console. "Priya, can you disable their outer defenses?" Priya nodded, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Give me 5 minutes." The plan was risky. While Priya worked her magic, the rest of the crew launched decoy drones to draw enemy fire. Explosions lit up the darkness as Zetherian ships chased after the false targets. Meanwhile, the Eclipse slipped through the chaos, closing in on the Annihilator. "Shields are down," Priya announced triumphantly. "Go, go, go!" The Eclipse surged forward, dodging incoming fire as it approached the superweapon's docking bay. Once inside, the team disembarked, moving quickly through labyrinthine corridors filled with Zetherian soldiers. Gunfire echoed around them as they fought their way deeper into the facility, relying on their training and enhancements to stay alive. At last, they reached the core chamber, a cavernous room dominated by a pulsating sphere of energy. Sophia placed the doomsday device at its base, entering the detonation sequence. A countdown timer appeared on her wrist display. 10 minutes. "That's our cue to leave," she said, turning to the others. But as they turned to retreat, a squad of Zetherian elites blocked their path. Commander Krillok himself emerged from the shadows, his sharp eyes gleaming with hatred. "You think you can stop us?" he snarled, raising his weapon. "You're nothing but insects squirming underfoot." Sophia clenched her fists, her enhanced muscles tensing for battle. "Maybe we're insects," she shot back, "but even insects can sting." The fight that followed was brutal. Outnumbered and outgunned, the team fought with everything they had. Sophia moved like lightning, her blows shattering armor and sending enemies sprawling. Priya hacked into nearby systems, creating distractions and sealing doors behind them. One by one, the Zetherians fell, but not without cost. Several members of the team were killed, their bodies left behind as the survivors pushed forward. With less than 2 minutes left on the timer, Sophia and Priya reached the exit. Behind them, alarms blared, and the facility began to collapse. They sprinted toward the Eclipse, leaping aboard just as the engines roared to life. "Get us out of here!" Sophia shouted to the pilot. The ship rocketed away from the Annihilator, narrowly avoiding debris as the station began to crumble. In the distance, the Zetherian homeworld glowed ominously, its surface racked by explosions as the chain reaction spread. Then, with a deafening roar, the Annihilator detonated. A shockwave rippled outward, consuming everything in its path. The Zetherian homeworld shattered into pieces, its once mighty empire reduced to cosmic dust. The Eclipse shook violently as the blast wave struck, but the cloaking device held firm, shielding them from the worst of the destruction. When the chaos subsided, silence filled the void. Sophia stared out at the wreckage, her chest heaving with exhaustion. Tears welled in her eyes, not just for the victory, but for the lives lost along the way. Priya sat beside her, her face pale but resolute. "It's over," Sophia whispered. "We did it." But the cost was staggering. Billions of Zetherians had perished, along with countless innocents caught in the crossfire. Earth itself bore scars that might never heal. As the Eclipse limped back toward human-controlled space, news of the mission spread across the galaxy. Some hailed the crew as heroes. Others condemned them as murderers. Either way, humanity's survival had come at a terrible price tag in the weeks that followed. Survivors gathered to mourn and rebuild. On Earth, makeshift memorials sprang up in the ruins of cities, honoring those who had given their lives. Factories churned out supplies, and scientists worked tirelessly to restore what had been lost. Colonies scattered across the stars began to reconnect, forming new alliances and vowing to protect each other from future threats. Far away, the Vorthax observed silently. They had warned the galaxy about humanity's wrath, but even they hadn't foreseen the lengths to which humans would go to ensure their survival. Perhaps, they mused, the real lesson wasn't about fear, but about resilience. As the galaxy slowly recovered, humanity looked to the stars with cautious optimism. They had proven their strength, ingenuity, and unyielding will to survive. But they also carried the burden of what they had done, knowing that the line between heroism and horror was often thinned in the quiet moments between despair and hope. One truth remained: humanity had endured. And though the road ahead promised more challenges and sacrifices, they faced it together, united by the belief that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come.